in with Jerri and Mark Jorgensen, and they are from Desert Solace. It is an addiction recovery facility in St. George, Utah. Beautiful St. George, Utah.
It is beautiful.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. Is it hot this time of year? Is it still hot?
Not as hot as here.
Not as hot as here, which is weird. It's so hot here. Anyway, but you guys do an addiction treatment program. We've been focusing actually on the sexual addiction aspect of this, but you guys also do substance abuse as well. Mm-hmm. And so, we had mentioned during the break that they sometimes, if not always, go hand in hand.
Well, like I said before, addiction is about trying to escape. Addiction is not the problem. Addiction is the symptom. And I say that to people, and they look at me like I'm crazy. But when you think deeper on it, that really makes sense, because the problem is whatever you're trying to hide from your addiction. The brain sees addiction as the solution. When the brain is stressed and the brain has a problem, the brain wants to escape, the brain is looking for a way out, and the easy way out, of course, is to grab a substance or grab a behavior or whatever. And of course, addiction, in people, when they think of addiction, they think of drugs and alcohol, and that's what people are doing when they use those substances, is just trying to escape. And that makes sense to people. People get that. But what is not as commonly known is that to escape into fantasy and escape into those highs created chemically by the brain from a sexual high or sexual rush is just as addictive to the brain as the substance is. And so the brain starts to crave that same rush. And so what happens is people will recognize, well, I've got a problem with alcohol, I've got a problem with drugs, and they'll do what they can to overcome it. They may even go to a rehab and get over it. Well, if they don't address their primary addiction, they'll just come out and they'll quit doing that, but they'll find another way to escape. They'll find another way to hide. And so we find that sex addiction and substance addiction very often co-occur. Now, we do primarily focus on sexual addiction. We treat people with that as their primary focus, but of course, people that have that will also, come with some substance issues too. Not all of them, but often. I'd say probably about half of the people we treat also have some sort of a substance issue also.
It's probably a snowball effect. I mean, you guys could tell me better than anybody, but they probably are addicted to sex, and they're like, oh man, I need to stop doing this. I'm going to start drinking, and then a snowball probably just goes hand in hand.
And some of it might be, they may be, you mentioned something earlier about, faith-based, and oftentimes faith-based people, this affects very heavily because you can't, it's not, they don't go somewhere and buy it. It's private. It's very shaming, and so it's very, very secretive. And addiction thrives in secrecy, and that's another reason that this is just exploding, is because it's so secret. But it's like whenever someone is really faith-based, they go, oh, wait a minute, oh, okay, now this does not really align with what I've been taught or what I've felt or what I've experienced. And so oftentimes because of that, they, are not willing to seek help. But faith-based people they're impacted. It doesn't matter, what. Everyone's impacted, but faith-based people realize I think there might be a deeper level of shame just because it doesn't align with what we believe, with who they are.
Yeah, and it's, there's, well, we don't need to get it. I could have used church lingo there, but there's more of a less, I don't know how to say, okayness. Like the people, they go out of their, like people in churches, for the most part, from what I understand, they go out of their way to make sure and say, hey, pornography is bad, sex addiction is bad. Yeah. And premarital sex is bad.
And we believe, we don't even talk about really bad or good or right or wrong. No. It does not serve them. It's not in alignment with what they want in our lives. And that's why we believe our treatment center is so successful, because we're not there just to change their behavior. If we did that, we could just lock them up in a cabin for, 3 months and say, okay, you're good. Yeah. But no, it's so much deeper than that. And that's why our treatment center, it's a place of miracles. And I see it every day with the men that come in. And while we're here, it is for men only. Eventually we want to start a place for women, because like Mark mentioned, the women are catching up on this pornography and sex addiction thing. It used to be just
Yeah.
male thing, and that's not the case anymore. But right now our facility is for males only 18 and up. And so a lot of these young boys come in and they're just struggling with the pornography, but they might be in treatment with a man in his 50s or 60s or whatever, and where he has acted out, and they're going, oh, I wish I had gotten treatment when I was your age, but there's never a bad time to get treatment.
Yeah.
We've treated people in their 70s.
Oh, no kidding.
No kidding.
Wow. Mark and Jerri Jorgensen, we're talking about Desert Solace, and I wanted to talk now about maybe the recovery process. What is your guys', how do you guys go through? So somebody is addicted, they are addicted to this. What is your guys' process for getting them through? What's the treatment and getting them through this addiction?
Okay.
Well, of course, we're such firm believers in residential treatment is because, well, that was my experience, and that's what worked for me. And I struggled. I don't want to disparage outpatient treatment or individual therapy at all, but in my case, it just wasn't enough because the pressures of life just would keep getting to me. I had to remove myself.
And now more than ever, especially with pornography and sexual addiction, people are being bombarded by it.
Continually.
It's everywhere.
Everywhere you go. There's, right across the street.
Yes.
There's signs all over the place.
Exactly.
and it's just that people are being bombarded with this.
Yes.
And so
And when they come into treatment, we don't pretend that they're never going to have that bombarding again. And we just teach them a healthier way to deal with it. So, of course, the primary idea behind coming to a residential treatment is to remove yourself and to detox, if you will, to give that brain time to settle down and just to be able to think rationally and just to kind of drift more into the addiction side of things. They have done studies on the brain. When a brain is really what's the word I'm looking for? Charged up in a sexual rush or whatever. And they've done brain scans on people that are in that state, and those brains are lit up just like someone
who's getting high,
who is as high as a kite.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that brain needs time to detox from that continual stimulation. And there's well, I won't go into that. There's a term it's a clinical term. It's called the hedonic set point, whereas the level of arousal needed to get to the amount of stimulation needed to reach arousal raises and raises and raises. And we talked about that earlier. As this addiction escalates, we want to kind of lower that set point to where the brain is more normal, and so that's the reason for coming in.
And just real quick, just the thought that popped into my mind. I'm seeing documentaries, I'm seeing news stories all the time. You're talking about wanting to raise the level of that. Mm-hmm. We're seeing stories all over college campuses about sexual assault like crazy.
Right. Uh-huh.
And so, and to say that maybe there isn't a relation, but
we believe there is.
Yeah, I'm thinking there might be.
Yeah, and whether it's military, society, college campuses, when they have access to this, and it's so unhealthy, and their brains get just clouded and kind of crazed. How does it not bleed into their life?
An addict is often asked when he's caught or something or does something really stupid, which usually happens, and someone will ask the addict, "Well, what were you thinking?" And the answer is, "Well, you're not.
Yeah,
you're really not. You're just." And looking back, you as an addict gets healthier, looks back on that situation, they say, "Yeah, that was crazy. Well, I wasn't thinking," and they're not. They're not in their right brain when they're deep into addiction of any type.
Yeah.
And so the first step then is, of course, just to get that brain calmed down,
lower that level,
and remove the access, and then the second big factor in residential treatment is to have the structure, because idleness and lack of structure and just free time is prime breeding ground.
Idle hands, right?
Idle hands. That old adage has a lot of truth to it. And people that don't have structure, people that just have a lot of free time on their hands, they're looking for some sort of stimulation. They can take that in a lot of different directions. So we give them a structure, we keep them busy. There's a lot of activities to do. And of course, we do traditional therapies where we have a chance to explore, well, what are you hiding from in life? What's going on? Obviously we want to look at the background. what sort of traumatic experiences are you dealing with, because that's a critical part in addiction. Is it's always rooted in some sort of trauma. And when I say trauma, we think of horrible, awful things that people have had happen to them, if they were abused, or, physically, sexually, or whatever. And of course, that does qualify as trauma. But there is little t trauma, too, they call it. My trauma might be I was turned down for the prom or whatever. And just have disappointing experiences in life. And it's not necessarily the experience itself. It's what we decide about ourselves. It's what we decide about life. It's what we decide about the world as a result of those experiences. And people form beliefs about themselves and about what that event meant. And that's where they start to take those beliefs and start to form behaviors from those beliefs.
So are you guys trying to find out what that T or the little t is?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah, and so that's
crucial.
that big.
Well, we don't
that's
try
the-
that.
Yeah,
It
yeah, that has to
happens.
happen.
It
Okay.
happen.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is this in an individual setting? Is it a group
Yes.
setting? How does
Both.
Oh, both. Okay.
Both. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep, they do individual and group.
They'll
or
do
both.
individual and group. And group sessions are powerful too, because they're with people that can relate or been where they are. This is such a shaming thing, and if a guy gets a chance to be in a group with someone who's not going to judge them, they've been where they are, they know what they're experiencing, they know what they're feeling, and it lets them learn to make that connection like Jerri talked about. Well, I can connect with this human being, I can relate because, hey, this person's been where I am, and he knows what I'm going through, and so I feel a little bit more safe to kind of let my walls down and share about what's happened to
And
me.
it allows for total honesty and total transparency, which has to happen.
And that's something that I
recovery.
feel like with, you guys are talking about that this is a shameful addiction. I feel like group therapy, that would be the last thing I would want to do. Just thinking about it, but it's actually
It's
very
very
important.
healthy. It's very important, again, for that connection and they feel safe. And when the men come into our center, and they have told me this time and time again, that they immediately felt safe. Now, this is not a spa club. Yeah. This is like work. But it's a lot of tough work, because our therapists are going to ask them to go to places where they don't want to go emotionally, and because it's that surgery thing. We're doing emotional surgery. We are finding out those deep causes, and we're rooting them out and presenting them so that they're aware of them. And we really stress, that they live consciously. And we talk about that a lot, because addicts don't live consciously. They're totally unconscious. They're just hither, thither, and, their triggers hit, and they're just going to jump.
Instant gratification.
It is. And so, really living in the present and really living a conscious life is huge.
And so you guys start with that. And what is it, a 12-step process? I know that's an addiction. That's what a lot
We are
of
12-step based,
Okay,
yes.
so you guys are
Yes,
12-step
they do a
based.
12-step meeting every single day.
Okay. Do we want to run through those 12 steps? It seems like kind of.
Well, the 12 steps have been around for about 80 years,
Yeah.
I guess, when Bill W. came up with them, and of course they're associated with Alcoholics Anonymous, and they have been adapted for different types of addiction. They're pretty much the same. I think the first variation was Narcotics Anonymous, maybe, and don't quote me on that.
Okay.
But there's Narcotics Anonymous, there's Overeaters Anonymous, there is Sexaholics Anonymous, and there's Sex Addicts. There's actually several anonymous 12-step groups just within sexual addiction. But the basic concept behind the 12 steps is to recognize that this is something I cannot handle myself, and I need something bigger than myself to overcome this. And they are faith-based. The original 12 steps says, you turn this over to God. I've known many atheists who have done this, and their higher power. They've kind of adapted that language of higher power versus God, and that's fine. So whatever your higher power means to you, but to some, the higher power may be the group consciousness, and honestly, I don't get that, but okay, if it works for
If it
them,
works for you,
that's great. Whatever, but at any rate, they're still recognizing that this is something I can't do by myself, and I have to be completely honest with what's happening. I have to confess, I guess, for lack of a better word, but taking that out of a religious context, just to open up and be honest about what I've done and be accountable. Thank you, about what's happened, and be willing to make amends with people I've hurt, and to be willing to continue to recognize my faults and to just continue to work on them, and to pay it forward is basically
Service,
the last step. And so, that's that's a very brief rundown of what the 12th step is about, but that is critical. Breaking, we're about breaking through that shame piece. And you talked about the groups and people being uneasy doing that. And Jerri says, some people instantly feel safe, some don't. Sometimes that takes time. Some come in and are very, very guarded. They don't want to share. They are very ashamed of what they've done. They are very embarrassed, and that's fine. Just sit in and just they come around as they come to feel that safety and recognize that, hey, these guys are just like me. They've been down the same road. That those walls start to slowly crack and they come out, and that's why it's not a 1 week process. That's why it's a 90-day process, because that can't just happen in a day or two.
Speaking with Mark and Jerri Jorgensen from Desert Solace, you can find more information at desertsolace.com. One thing you mentioned and a few times was, atheists deal with this, religious people deal with this. Mm-hmm. Some people don't like group settings at first. Some people do. How individualized are you with each person at your facility, and how important is it to be individualized with each person?
Well, they're individualized in the sense that everyone's story is different, but it is a program. And that's an important part. Maybe that's hard to understand unless you're actually a part of it. But being part of a community, maybe the closest analogy that people might relate to is a military boot camp. It's very rigid, it's very structured, and it's very precise on what is expected of you. And it's tailored to, and the point of that, and the point of our program, now we're not like a boot camp, no, we're not that brutal, but we are very insistent about following the guidelines and following the program and holding the boundaries, because like Jerri mentioned, addicts don't know boundaries. They just addicts want what they want when they want it, and that's what they do. And so they don't even know what boundaries are. So if they can practice observing boundaries, like, okay, you're going to get up at a certain time, you're going to be at a certain class at a certain time. To some people, that's huge. They're not used to doing that. They just live their life on the fly. And so for someone to have to just inject that much structure into their life can be huge, and can be a huge breakthrough for them to just overcome this life they've lived of just taking what I want when I want it. Does that make sense?
And they get individual therapy too.
Yeah.
It's not all group. They get that too. So it is very personalized to them, and they get to experience that group, because that community group is critical to recovery.
All right, desertsolace.com for more information. We got one more break, and I wanted to ask you guys just a couple more questions. We're going to have a little short break after this. How do people contact you? And maybe we'll mix in some other fun stuff also. This is the special Desert Solace Hour on AM 1220 KHTS. AM 1220 KHTS, your hometown station, speaking with Mark and Jerri Jorgensen, and they run Desert Solace, a recovery program in St. George, Utah. You can find out more information by going to desertsolace.com. Now, it's beautiful in St. George, and you wanted to talk about, you guys are very outdoorsy at Desert Solace.
We take advantage of our fabulous location.
Some of the best hiking in the world, by the way, in southern Utah.
Our clients hike a lot, and they do yoga twice a week, which is kind of a mind-body spiritual connection that's really, we've just seen amazing results with them doing yoga. We're on 5 acres of property right in the backyard of Snow Canyon State Park. I don't know if some people may be aware of that. So they do hike 3 to 4 times a week. We believe we treat the whole person, so we can't treat someone that's not, healthy enough to absorb all the stuff that we're doing. So the physical exercise, the yoga, we have horses on property where we do equine therapy, which for those that aren't really familiar with that, it's all about, it's horse therapy. It's not necessarily riding the horses, it's having an experiential experience with the animals. They're kind of magical creatures that kind of mirror anyway, it's too crazy to explain, but it's awesome. And so, and we have a chef So very nutritious meals, because oftentimes a sugar addiction can interfere with recovery. So, yeah, so they eat healthy, they exercise every day, and yoga and work with the horses. It's awesome.
Very structured, very important.
structured.
How do people find out more information? Well, you can go to desertsolace.com and find out more information. And I'm going to ask you this. What would you say to somebody who, we only have about 2 minutes here, but what would you guys say to somebody who's dealing with this and wanting to get help?
That there is hope. Being trapped in addiction is a very hopeless place. And people often say, "Well, nobody ever dies from this addiction." But I'll tell you a very profound story. Very shortly after we opened, I got a call from a mother in Kansas that just wanted to know all about our program and everything. And I says, "Well, do you have someone that's struggling, a son or something?" She says, "Well, actually, I just want to find out about this and wonder because my son committed suicide over this. He just felt so hopeless in his, and it really floored me. I just didn't know what to say to her, and she just wanted to kind of be involved in the cause, and we've kind of touched base and talked a little bit since then, and so it is devastating, but there is hope and there is help available, and you're not alone. There's a lot of people. This is such an isolating thing. It is such a shaming thing that you think that someone trapped in it thinks they're the only one that's in it in the whole world. And I've been there. I've had that feeling. And not until I came out of that shame and admitted it, can I realize that, hey, there's other people struggling and there is a light at the end of this tunnel.
Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. There is hope, there is recovery. I've seen it in my own marriage. I've seen it in the lives of so many of the men that we've treated. There is recovery, and recovery is absolutely a joyous place to live.
Not only the men you treated, but also in their families as well.
Oh, yeah. And, we communicate often, and
Thank you guys for coming in. I really appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you.
DesertSolace.com for more information. Mark and Jerri Jorgensen, go check it out. Again, DesertSolace.com. Learn more about them over there in beautiful St. George, Utah, actually, right? Just a quick drive up to 15,
it's
right?
only 5 hours away.
It's a quick drive. And you lose an hour. So it's
there you go.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you guys again for
Thanks,
coming
Kyle.
in, and it's always good to see you guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kyle.